My name is Hamza and I was a Quran teacher. For most of my life, I believed I was on the right path. I had memorized large portions of the Quran before I was even a teenager. People in my community called me a high with pride, and older men at the mosque would shake my hand like I was someone special. I grew up in a home where obedience to Allah was not an option. It was survival. My father was strict, my mother was silent, and our lives revolved around the mosque, prayer times, and reciting the words of the Prophet. By the age of 19, I was teaching children how to read the Quran. I wore my white th like a badge of honor, repeating verses from memory, explaining them the way they had been explained to me. I didn't question anything. I couldn't. To question was to rebel, not just against Islam, but against my family, my culture, my entire identity. But everything changed the day a small boy named Bal looked up at me and asked, "Dad, why does Allah allow men to beat their wives?" He was referring to Surah An-Nisa 4:34, a verse I had recited many times but never fully confronted. I paused, my voice cracked. I gave the standard answer, the one I'd memorized myself. It is a light tap, just symbolic, only if the woman is truly disobedient. It is not meant to hurt. But that night I went home and read the verse again and again and again. I looked at the Arabic. I read 3 translations. I searched tafsir after tafsir. They all said the same thing. The beating was real. The authority was unquestioned. The man was allowed to discipline his wife. I sat on the edge of my bed, the Quran open in my lap, my hands shaking. Is this really from God? I whispered. I wanted to believe there was a hidden meaning. That somehow I had misunderstood. That all the scholars I had learned from were wrong. But deep down I knew the truth. That night I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I stayed up wrestling with what I had read. With the God I thought I knew and the doubts that were no longer whispers but shouts inside my head. It felt like I had just uncovered something poisonous buried inside a book I was raised to cherish. Still, I pushed the doubts down. I told myself to stop thinking, to trust the scholars, to follow the majority. I fasted more. I prayed harder. I begged Allah to cleanse my heart of this confusion. But the peace I had once felt in my prayers never returned. Days later, while preparing for class, I stumbled upon Surah At-Tawbah 9:29. Fight those who do not believe in Allah nor the last day until they pay the jizah with willing submission and feel themselves subdued again. My heart sank. Was this justice? Was this mercy? I remembered my Christian neighbors, families who had always been kind to us. I remembered my childhood friend Daniel who once gave me his jacket when I was shivering at school. Were these the people I was supposed to humiliate with taxes until they submitted to Islam? I couldn't reconcile it. I tried to ignore it. I went to class. I taught my students. But when I recited that verse, I couldn't bring myself to explain it. I skipped over the translation. My mouth moved, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. And that's when something in me broke. It wasn't a dramatic collapse. It was quiet, like a door shutting slowly behind me. I was losing my faith. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't hold it up anymore. I started searching online, quietly, carefully, using incognito tabs and deleting my history. I read articles from former Muslims. I watched testimonies. I saw the same pain in their eyes that I felt. In my chest. I wasn't alone. Then one night, I saw a YouTube video titled "Ex-Muslim Quran Teacher Shares His Story." I clicked it, not knowing that the video would change the course of my life. The man in the video looked like me, spoke like me, quoted the same verses I had. And then he said something I had never heard before. I left Islam not because I hated God, but because I wanted truth more than tradition. Truth more than tradition. I paused the video. My hands trembled. That night, I closed the Quran for the first time in my life and whispered a prayer that wasn't in Arabic. God, if you are real, if you are truth, then show yourself to me. I don't care if it cost me everything. I just want to know you. And he answered, but not in the way I expected and not without a cost. The days that followed were filled with silence. I still went to the masjid. I still led the prayer. I still taught the children. But something inside me had shifted. It was like I was wearing a mask that no longer fit. I would mouth the words of the Quran, but inside my soul was screaming. Every verse I once loved now felt like a riddle I couldn't solve, or worse, a wound I couldn't ignore. I stopped attending the Friday khutbahs. I told people I was sick. I started spending more time alone, staying in my room, avoiding my father's eyes. He noticed. "You are losing your light, Hamza," he said one evening. "Maybe you have a jinn problem." He meant it. He wasn't being sarcastic. In our world, doubt wasn't seen as a human struggle. It was seen as a demonic attack. But I knew better. My struggle wasn't with jinn. It was with truth. Late one night, I found myself scrolling through comments on a Christian forum. I wasn't looking to convert. I didn't even trust Christians. All my life, I'd been told they were misguided, lost, and cursed. But something about their words moved me. They spoke of a God who was personal, who didn't demand blind obedience, but offered love. One post stopped me cold. It said, "Jesus doesn't want slaves. He wants sons." Sons. I sat there staring at that sentence. I had always seen God as a master and myself as a servant. We were never meant to be close. We obeyed him out of fear, not love. Even paradise was earned through deeds, not relationship. But what if there was more? What if I had been wrong my whole life? The questions came faster now. Why did Islam teach that Allah was unknowable? Why did we repeat phrases like Allah knows best but never seek deeper understanding? Why did the Prophet marry a 9-year-old? Why were apostates sentenced to death? I couldn't stop them. One night, I opened the Bible online. I started reading the Gospel of John. I didn't know what to expect. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Something about that sentence shook me. It was poetry and power. And then I read, "The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us." I stopped. My heart was racing. I whispered out loud, "God became flesh." Tears filled my eyes. I couldn't explain it. I didn't even believe it fully, but something deep inside me moved. That night, I dreamed I was standing in a white room. It was empty except for one chair. A man was sitting in it dressed in white. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me. Then he stood up, walked toward me, and said, "Hamza, I know you." I woke up gasping for air. My pillow was soaked with tears. For the first time in years, I felt seen. I couldn't tell anyone about the dream. Not my parents, not my brothers, not even my closest friend, Ahmed. He would have reported me to the sheikh without a second thought. So, I suffered in silence. I kept reading the Bible in secret. I downloaded sermons. I listened to testimonies. My room became my sanctuary, my prison, and my battlefield. And the more I learned about Jesus, the more I started to question everything I had built. My identity on not just Islam but my pride, my status, my fear of being rejected. One night, I sat at my desk and wrote a letter to God. If you are the God of the Bible, the God who became flesh, then I want to know you. Not just follow rules, not just pray 5 times a day, I want to know you. But I'm scared. I don't want to lose my family. I don't want to be alone. Please show me what to do. That same week, I was scrolling online when I stumbled across a video from a former imam who had become a Christian. He said something that pierced my heart. The Jesus of the Bible isn't just a prophet. He is God in the flesh. And he came to set captives free. Captives. That's what I was. I was a captive to fear, to culture, to religion. And I needed to be free. I didn't know what that freedom looked like yet, but I was ready to take the first step. I began fasting from the masjid, from the rituals, from the words that no longer gave me peace. But I didn't tell anyone. I still wore the mask. My father once told me, "You are my pride. You are the light of our name." If he found out I had even questioned Islam, let alone opened a Bible, I knew I'd no longer be a son to him. I'd be a curse. One afternoon, I was alone in the house and couldn't resist the pull anymore. I pulled out my hidden phone, opened the Bible app, and went to the verse that had been haunting me. John 14 verse 6. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. That verse hit me like thunder. It wasn't just an invitation. It was a challenge. Jesus wasn't offering one of many paths. He was saying he was the only path. I read it again and again. Each time, something inside me broke and rebuilt itself. I stared at the screen for what felt like an hour. Then I heard the front gate slam. My younger brother had come home early. I quickly hid the phone under my pillow and jumped to my feet. But I had made a mistake. The Bible app was still open. Later that night, he came into my room without knocking. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't curious. He was cold. "What were you reading today?" I froze. My heart sank. I said nothing. "I saw something on your phone," he continued. "You know, if I tell Baba, he'll beat you, right? Maybe even throw you out." My hands were shaking. "I'm not doing anything wrong," I whispered, barely able to speak. "Reading their book is haram," he snapped. "You know that you're playing with fire." I could see it in his eyes. He hated me in that moment. Maybe out of fear, maybe out of confusion. Maybe because he thought I was dragging our family's honor through the dirt. I begged him not to tell anyone. He said he would think about it. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, repeating one sentence over and over. "Jesus, if you're real, help me." The next morning, everything exploded. My father barged into my room before dawn. He was furious. My brother had told him everything. "Are you a kafir?" he yelled. "You bring this filth into my home. You spit on the Quran." I tried to explain. I tried to say I was just curious that I wasn't rejecting him or our family, but he didn't care. He slapped me so hard my ears rang. Then he threw my books across the room and stormed out. I wasn't allowed to leave the house after that. My phone was confiscated. My room became a prison. No one spoke to me. Not my brothers, not my mother, not even my cousin, who once called me his best friend. It was like I had died. I spent 3 days in isolation. I wasn't beaten again, but the silence was worse. My father told the neighbors I had a spiritual sickness, that he was disciplining me back to the truth. They thought they were saving me, but I was already free inside. They just didn't know it yet. On the 4th night, something happened that changed everything. I had another dream. I was in a desert, alone and thirsty. I saw a man walking toward me, shining like the sun. I couldn't see his face clearly, but he knelt beside me and placed a cup of water in my hand. "Drink," he said gently. When I did, I felt alive, more alive than I'd ever been. I woke up, weeping. The next morning, I made a decision. I couldn't pretend anymore. I had to leave. Not just the house, but the system, the cage, the expectations, the lies. I contacted a Christian man I had met online. We'd been talking secretly for weeks. I told him I was ready to escape. He gave me the address of a safe house run by believers. All I had to do was find a way out. 2 days later, I waited until my father left for morning prayer. I grabbed an old backpack, slipped out the back gate, and ran. I didn't even have shoes. I ran through alleyways and back streets until I found a taxi and gave him the address. When I got there, the door opened before I knocked. A woman with kind eyes smiled at me and said, "Welcome home, brother." I collapsed into her arms and cried like a child. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid. I was safe. I had nothing. No money, no family, no future, but I had peace, and peace was everything. Life at the safe house was quiet but heavy. I spent most of my time in a small room with just a mattress and a Bible. The first few nights, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking of my father's face, of my little brothers, of the years I'd spent teaching others a book I no longer believed in. Guilt would sneak in like a thief at night. Was I betraying them, or had I finally told the truth? There was no easy answer. But in the stillness, I began to heal. I read the Gospel of Luke every morning. I didn't understand everything. Some verses confused me, but others shattered me in the best way. Like when Jesus said, "Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." I couldn't stop crying because for years I had been trained to hate. I was taught that Christians had corrupted the scriptures, that Jews were enemies of God, that non-Muslims were fuel for the fire. But Jesus didn't speak like that. He spoke of mercy, of forgiveness, of healing, and I wanted that. I began attending secret Bible studies with a few other ex-Muslims who had fled their homes like I had. Some were younger than me, just teenagers. Others were in their 40s, hiding from death thought was placed on their heads. We didn't need to speak much. Our eyes said enough. We were the forgotten, the unwanted, the free. One evening, the pastor who ran the house sat with me on the front porch. He was an older man, quiet but firm. The kind of presence that made you feel safe even when everything inside you was shaking. He said, "Hamza, I know you're still searching. That's okay, but Jesus isn't waiting for you to clean yourself up before you come to him. He already made the first move. He just wants your heart." I didn't say anything. He continued, "If you're ready, we can pray together. No pressure, just invitation." I nodded. I don't know what words I used that night. I wasn't eloquent. I didn't have perfect theology. I just knew one thing. I believed Jesus was real. I believed he had been walking with me long before I noticed him. And I wanted to follow him. So I bowed my head and, for the first time in my life, I didn't pray out of obligation or fear. I spoke freely. "Jesus, I don't know everything about you, but I believe you are the Son of God. I believe you died for me and I want to give you my life. Help me. Heal me. Lead me." I said, "Yin." And something broke open inside me. I don't know how to describe it. It was like a flood of warmth washing through my chest. Not just emotion, not just relief, but something deeper, like I was finally home. I looked up and the pastor was crying, too. "Welcome to the family," he said. That night, I slept with peace in my bones. Real peace. Not the kind I used to fake when bowing my head on a prayer mat. Not the kind I forced through repetition, but the kind that came from knowing I was fully seen and still loved. The next few weeks were a blur of learning and unlearning. I had to relearn how to think, how to trust, how to speak without filtering every word through the fear of blasphemy. Sometimes I still flinched when I heard the adhan echoing from a nearby mosque. Trauma is sticky like that, but I no longer bowed to it. I no longer belonged to fear. One day, I stood before a small group of believers in a hidden house church and gave my public testimony. My voice shook, my hands trembled, but I told them everything about the verse that cracked my soul open, about the beating, the betrayal, the escape, and about the man in white who met me in the desert of my dreams. When I was done, they clapped, not out of celebration, but out of shared pain and shared hope. That week, I was baptized in a nearby river. The water was cold. My body shivered, but as I came out of it, I felt a weight lift. I didn't even know I was still carrying. A man hugged me and whispered, "Your old life is buried, brother. You've been raised with Christ." I wept because it was true. I wasn't a Quran teacher anymore. I wasn't a prisoner of shame or a slave to approval. I was a child of God, and I was free. It's been 2 years since I left. 2 years since I walked away from the life that defined me, the religion that raised me and the family that once worshipped the ground I walked on. I haven't heard my father's voice since the day he struck me and called me a disgrace. My mother called once, just once. She didn't say much, only this: "You are dead to us. May Allah deal with you." Then the line went silent. Sometimes I replay that call in my head and wonder if she cried after hanging up or if she deleted my number and wiped her hands clean. I'll never know. I used to think I needed their approval to survive. Now I just pray they'll one day find the truth, too. I still get nightmares sometimes. I wake up sweating, hearing the Quran being recited in my dream, feeling the pressure of the life I left behind pulling me back. But those dreams don't own me anymore. They are just echoes. I spend my days now doing something I never imagined possible. Telling the truth. Not just to myself, but to others like me. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of people like me hiding in plain sight. Men and women who still bow in mosques with hollow hearts, who teach words they no longer believe, who stay silent because the cost of honesty is too high. I know that cost, But I also know the reward. One of the first people I helped was a young man from my old city. He found me through a video testimony I had recorded under a new name with my face blurred. He sent a single sentence in the first message. "I'll never know. I used to think I needed their approval to survive. Now I just pray they'll one day find the truth, too. I still get nightmares sometimes. I wake up sweating, hearing the Quran being recited in my dream, feeling the pressure of the life I left behind pulling me back. But those dreams don't own me anymore. They are just echoes. I spend my days now doing something I never imagined possible. Telling the truth.